Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Hunter, and the opening scene for Hunter Reviews, the Star Wars Holiday Special, is the most complicated thing I have ever edited. More complicated than the Jedi Temple scene at the beginning of Solo, and definitely more complicated than the Death Star. And a ton of work goes into those first 7 minutes, and a ton of work at the bits at the end, and a whole load of stuff in between. Actually, a ton of work went into Hunter Review's Star Wars Holiday Special, and we're gonna go over the creative process as we normally do. So starting off with the opening intro, there's our usual X-Wing. At this point, it's I just have it be standard procedure to put an X-Wing in at the beginning of these in at the beginning there. Here, open this up. I do believe that the X-Wing is actually a couple of layers up, and once again, it is very simple. Edit in. It's in frame for a bit longer than usual this time. I figured I'd slow it down a little bit. It's supposed to replace the bullet, but you can see the bullet whizzing by there. So it doesn't do a tremendously good job at replacing the bullet. Then we cut into our intro long time ago, Star Horse, and our opening text crawl. The opening text crawl was actually done via a third party on a website. I commissioned the opening text crawl from a third party, and they did just a fantastic job. The original clip actually has the original Star Wars music. Here, if I go down and I get rid of the the music that we had, it actually is the original music, but we went with the rock cover because that's way easier to get to use on YouTube. So it's another standard hyperspace effect, and I figured that, okay, that broke. Stand by. Here, let's do this. I figured, I've used this particular shot a number of times. It starts up at the quarter, and then it gets closer to it gets bigger as it approaches the lower corner there, and then finally here, it is out of frame. At which point it actually stops, well, off camera, but you can't see that, so the illusion is still there. We're still using the same images for the Falcon interior and the same editing tactics, but because they work. They work very effectively, which we just use a number of layers and have the characters on different layers. And we have the same background that we had with the last two Star Wars reviews. I keep using the same background because it works, and I don't see the need to upgrade it, like, at all. And then we cut to here, which is the star background, actually. Little known fact, I use the same star backdrop in every single instance that I needed one. I use the same image, which is actually this image from the very end of the credits. Like right there, I took a snapshot and just kept it on that, and then used that for the opening of the entire opening. to make it look not too conspicuous, I would rotate it every now and then. I would flip it horizontally. I would flip it vertically because it's space and you can do a lot with it. The same Star Destroyer image is back from the solo review. And this right here is actually one single image for Star Destroyers. Some bigger than others to give it the illusion that they are, like, apart in a number of places, with the Arquitens light cruiser playing the role of the transport ship in the center there. And then we cut back to the Millennium Falcon. Hunter's drinking coffee, Lyra's drinking cider. Oh, incoming message. That is my real phone ringtone, which is Perry Grip's Space Unicorn. For this, I added the radio filter that we created for the review, for the solo review. And I've actually been using that a lot. It is immensely helpful. And, so then we have the main screen, which is actually the same screen that we used for the radar screenshot in Solo. Only in this case, we use it for the on the main screen. Darth Mickey! The Darth Mickey image that we have there is actually just, it's actually the next shot, but really, 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 really tiny. I only have one image for Darth Mickey. One of these days, I will commission an artist to create better images of the poor guy. And a couple more interior shots. And here is the full shot in all of its glory. As you can see with this side-by-side comparison, the tiny picture. I took a picture of the bridge of an Imperial Star Destroyer, and just sort of pasted him in there, and that's what we ended up using pretty much for this entire conversation.
And I should have known that you'd show your face eventually, pony boy.
The Darth Vader filter has returned from Solo. I kept it, because I figured I would be doing more of these. And this conversation goes on for a little while. That's where you're wrong, Mickey. Spike?
What? I'm very busy right now.
The, Spike yelling is, once again, the Rebels blew up the Death Star skit from Robot Chicken. I have stuck with that particular skit for his voices, and it has been working fantastically. I love it every time he shows up. And, by the way, him showing up is, just a standard, he starts down the bottom, and then really quick pops into frame over the course of about, I want to say it's 4 frames. Yeah, it's 4 he pops up, like, really quick.
I'm very busy right now.
You see, me and my gunnery team did a comprehensive and obsessive analysis of every single space battle that has ever been conceived. The book. This is a very important vector that I came up with for this very specific shot. Originally, the book it had these, like, words and nothing else. I added in the bookmarks. I added in some highlighter streaks. And if we zoom in pretty much all the way over here, I'm trying to zoom in on it. You can't really see it too good. But it's a group of resistance bombers going up against the Mandator 4 First Order Dreadnought from The Last Jedi. And then right there, written in Arabish, the Star Wars language, I believe. I believe that's what it's called. written right there in Arabic is the word dumb. Direct translation of these 4 letters is the word dumb in Arabic, which I just took marker tool and painted that like smack dab right onto the page. Rendered the whole thing down to a single layer, and then put the whole thing together. And then this is him, like that. He doesn't have any tactics. This shot right here was a nightmare. That shot was a nightmare. Because this is footage from The Last Jedi. And as such, the movement of the Falcon has 5 different anchor points. Because if I remove the Falcon, the standard Millennium Falcon is just there. Because this is a shot from Return of the Jedi. And it's the shot where the fleet is warping in. And if we put the Falcon back, we can see that it completely overshadows the Millennium Falcon, except this split second at the end, which you can't even notice. But as a result, the whole thing has 5 anchor points. Like, first it goes here, then it's here, then it's down here, and then finally it's inverted for some reason. But thankfully, at that point, it is off screen. So you can't even see that part. More conversation scenes. Looking at this entire thing, honestly, probably the photoshopping for the solo review was one of the more complicated things that we did. But then we have the enormous fleet shot here, and this is actually all separated, and they're all moving in sort of different directions. And these are each ship is designated as its own image. Like, we have an image specifically devoted to X-wings, image devoted to A-wings, and then image devoted to Y-wings, and then the rest of the fleet. Special thanks to the Star Wars community and Fractal Sponge, who came up with the 3D renders for the Mon Cal cruisers. I could not find a decent 3D render of the Nebulon B frigate, and it's supposed to be the Rebel fleet, which they need Nebulon B frigates because it serves apparently this incredibly pivotal role within the Alliance fleet, and of course the Corvette cruisers mixed in there as well. I actually managed to find just one image of each ship from a whole bunch of different angles, so that's what I did with the Mon Cal cruisers, the single Venator, and the Corvettes. And another conversation scene. Quick shot from Star Wars The Last Jedi. Simple flyby shot. I mentioned on Patreon the trouble we have with the aluminum Falcon, which is that we only really have 5 images of the aluminum Falcon. So we have to, it has to be, like set in simple flyby shots like this one. We can't do anything tremendously complex with that. I don't know. I'll probably figure something out for Star Horse the series, if we ever do Star Horse the series. This was another shot for. I think I keep saying Last Jedi. It's Return of the Jedi, by the way. This is another shot from Return of the Jedi. This is when Lando is like, "Oh crap, pull up," and then the fleet just sort of scatters. Which is kind of what I was going for, because in the next shot we see a whole bunch of ships just sort of flying in multiple different directions. This is the same cruiser image over and over and over again. And a simple flyby shot of some X-wings. Okay. There we go. A simple flyby shot of some X-Wings. Make it look like there's a lot going on. And then for this particular shot, we have the fleet with your corvettes, some Nebulon Bs, and the 5 Moncal cruisers. Honestly, I know for a fact that a fleet of this caliber could basically instantly destroy what Mickey stands to throw at them, which is the 4 Disney destroyers and the Arquitens light cruiser, which is serving the role of a transport ship for this. And another thing I want to emphasize is that these 2 ships here are moving separately. They are separate images. Here's the Venator, and here's the Moncal. They just ended up syncing together, like, almost perfectly. More cockpit shots. This was an interesting shot because the one down, there's like 10 anchor points here, so it's just to make it look like it's sort of flying around and not just static. And then you got the other 2 up here, which eventually they break off from the shot in 2 different directions when Hunter tells them to keep the formation loose. And then we cut to the X-Wing. It is impossible to find these interior shots for starfighter cockpits in Star Wars. At least ones that are empty. I could not find a Y-Wing. I could not find a Y-Wing interior shot that was looking back at the pilot's seat with no one in it. This image right here that I did find for the interior of an X-Wing it's not, I don't even like this image. First of all, when I got this image, you could actually probably still see it, the green screen rim around the windows. And I cleaned that up to the best of my ability without destroying the windows. And the whole image is, it's really tiny too, I think. Like the resolution on this image is ridiculously tiny, and I am not happy with it. Thankfully, it's only on screen for a few minutes to do plans. Twilight saying yes in Japanese right there. That is a single line pulled out of a video called, I believe it is called Your Waifu Doesn't Love You. And it's relatively early in the video if you want to go look that up. Anyway, so this shot, this is a shot where the cruisers are getting closer because we're now moving towards them. And the Falcon sort of sits there for a couple moments, then starts panning down in the downward direction. All of their heavy cannons are on the top part of the vessel. That is not complemented at all by the 4 measly turrets they have defending the ship on the underside. The shot here is recycling an old asset that I created for the solo review. I think I said I would probably use this again, but this is the standard shot used for the main review, with all of the windows CG'd to be transparent so that we can put whatever we want outside of it. In this case, it is the underside of 4 Disney Star Destroyers and an Arquitens light cruiser. The underside of these, and the rest, actually, yeah, the rest of these Star Destroyer shots were all rendered by Fractal Sponge. He is a fantastic 3D artist, and if you're, I highly recommend you look up his stuff because it is just fantastic. But yeah, then we get into the fleet shot with this is actually this is actually another still image. All of there's a cruiser in the back here that never actually made it into the shot, I believe. No, it did not. There's another Corvette back here too. The only things that really made it into the shot were these two Corvettes, the Nebulon Bs, and the 3 cruisers at the front of the 5 cruiser formation. To give it the illusion that they were actually moving, the background space shot is actually moving in a slow upwards direction. Alright, so the laser blasts. The laser blasts, it's the same image from the solo review again. It's a linear wipe as it fades in, coming out of the gun, and then the same wipe again as it travels away. Same thing with the green ones coming out of the smaller ships. The only problem with them is it cuts off right here, and I did not fix that in post, and I meant to, but I was really pressed for time with this review. So it's basically that effect, but coming from multiple different points in the shot. All the sound effects from all the sound effects in this space battle segment came from what was it? Star Wars Empire at War, the real-time strategy Star Wars game, which has a fantastic sound bank for stuff like this. And then we cut over to this, once again, Star Destroyer rendered by Fractal Sponge, and the Mickey Mouse ears edited in by yours truly. These are edited off of the original Disney Star Destroyer, which I'm thinking of naming Childhood Destroyers now, because I haven't actually dropped a name of them. And I'm thinking I'm going to go with Childhood Destroyers. And just real quick, that thing that I mentioned of how there are only 4 turrets on the underside, if we look really close, we can see that the only major cannons they have are centered around the hangar bay and a couple up front. There might be 2 to 4 point defense cannons. Most of the heavy stuff is on top, like you can see a row of guns right here. And there's obviously the 4 heavy cannons off to the side here and on the other side. I think Daniel from Space Dock came up with the best means of fixing a Star Destroyer. You take off the top bit here, because exposed bridges are a major no-no in any situation. Take the guns on top, copy that on the bottom. Put the hangar base somewhere else, like on the side or something. If you have to have your hangar base, put them on the side. That's what they did in Star Wars Battlefront 2 anyway. And bridge deep in the interior of the ship. Because this is incredibly exploitable. In fact, I do exploit it in the review. The engine powering down noise right there isn't actually a power engine noise. It's actually the sound effect that plays when the shields go down in Empire at War. And it's also the same explosion effect all across the hull for every single laser blast, just lined up with the laser blast. And it actually looks pretty good. And then we cut over to a Y-wing cockpit, which this is the only interior shot I could find of a Y-wing, which I didn't want to use this one because all of the ones that we see in the films have like a hose coming down, like it goes up and then around and then down the side here, and this didn't have that. And of course, this one came with nothing out of the windows. I think this particular shot is actually from Rogue Squadron? No, it doesn't have the bomb meter. It could be X-Wing Alliance, but I'm not sure. It's definitely one of the older games. And actually, all 4 Star Destroyers are in this particular image, but they're targeting the one at the front. And that's why it looks a little bit more pixelated. So then we cut over to the 3 Y-Wings, which is actually the same profile shot of a Y-Wing, copy and pasted 3 times. Some bigger than others to give it a sort of formation look, like they're not all the same size. And then the photon torpedoes, which is this is actually what the photon torpedo looks like. I gave it a sort of red rim and then made it glow just so that it doesn't look like just this regular sort of thing that they're just firing and it's boring and it's dumb. And then we cut to the torpedoes. They actually do it's the same basic tactic that we normally use. The pan shots. Only this one was a little bit more complicated, because this one... You're gonna love how I pulled this one off. So this is the top layer right here. As you can see, the hangar bay is cut out of the entire shot. And then what I did to compensate for my crappy photoshopping skills is I just took the regular shot and pasted it underneath at the very, 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 very bottom layer. So with this on top, it'll look like things are going like it'll look like it'll be going above this yellow wall right here, but behind this wall right here. So it'll look like the torpedoes are going into the hangar bay. And then I just took the explosions and did the same thing to make it look like they were coming out of the hangar bay. And the effect worked horrendously well. Like it's disgusting how good that came out. I love it. Oh, it's so good. And then we have probably my favorite shot of the entire opening. Oh, God. Okay, so this is actually a different shot. It is not a mirrored image. And the way I pulled this off, oh, you're gonna love this. This is shot A, and this is layer A, and this is layer B. I literally cut it in half with an image editor, made 2 separate images, and like I pasted them into like a 1080p image. I pasted the whole ship into a 1080p image, cut it in half, made another 1080p image, took that half that I cut off and pasted that in, because Paint.net, if you have an image of the same size and you cut something out, it'll paste it in the same place that you cut it out. Which is a really useful feature for something like this. And then just erase the half that I cut off. And then have the explosion cover up the actual ship just falling apart. The explosion effect we see here is actually what I used to use for the orbital friendship cannon, which is no longer being used within Hunter reviews. And obviously we have the Y-Wings flying by and like this really awesome dramatic shot as the aluminum Falcon follows suit. It was around there that I made the Falcon problem video for Patreon. And then we, where's my map? There it is. And then we cut back to the cockpit for a little bit. And then we approach the cruiser. Same basic principle of them approaching the fleet from the interior. Simple flyby shot. Alright, this one was painful. Because what I had to do was, I used the same tactic I did for the Star Destroyer. I cut out the door. Of the 1080p image. It was actually already 1080p because the interior shots of the Arquitens cruiser is all in Gary's mod, which has been insanely helpful for these interior shots. So I cut out the door, and that's the door right there. And so with the door on top like this, and the rest of the image on bottom like this, and we put the lightsaber in the middle. And then basically the difficult part was figuring out how to get it to rotate all the way around, and I'm still not entirely happy with how it came out. And then we just sort of have the door fall off the hinges with Hunter standing there. That's actually a standard Hunter vector. He's not even holding anything. And then, just a real quick Falcon hallway in the background. Just a quick search for Falcon hallway, and found it relatively quickly. It's pretty easy to find, actually. Standard pan-in shot. I actually made an entirely new vector for this, with his, heavy blaster pistol and the, lightsaber. And then, the original plan was to get rid of the head, and then have the gun and saber hold still as we switch between the pictures. That didn't really pan out. So, but I did manage to do that between these two. Mickey's hand in this was annoying. Basically what I had to do was I had to cut off his fingers and then spin them around so that it would look like this, and then paint this in so that it looked like it was like rounded to a point. It still doesn't look like he's really holding it properly, but this was the best I was able to do. And this is just some standard talking bits right here. And then we have I took fencing lessons, so let's do this. It's another standard movement shot of the lightsaber falling into view. All the lightsaber effects for this fight are from both Empire at War and Star Wars Jedi Knight 2. Which, another fantastic sound bank for lightsaber sound effects. And then, basically, the entire lightsaber, fight is a lot of movement. Just a lot of moving back and forth, like this shot, for example, is he walks into frame, and then Mickey reacts to this by walking into frame. And then we have, and then Hunter pushes the offensive like this by moving forward slightly. Mickey reacts via moving backwards slightly. And then Mickey moves forwards a little bit. And Hunter moves back again. And then Mickey pushes back slightly. I think. Wait, no. What does he do here? Oh yeah, no, that's him gearing up for a bigger swing. Sorry. Hunter pulls out the gun. The gun was interesting to pull off because this angle is stupid. And that just sort of falls into frame. And then after a while, falls back out of frame. I always wanted Hunter to fight with both weapons, which was realized with this. And then the laser coming out of the gun. It's a linear wipe, and I'm still not entirely happy with the effect. It comes. Here it is. Okay. It goes out of the gun. It's the very bottom layer. It goes out of the gun. And then Mickey sort of has to pull back, but at this point, he's, like, already been shot. But he pulls back to deflect. And the point where the laser beam, like, actually meets with the point where it deflects lines up pretty good. I am proud of that. Not so proud of the rest of it. Basically, I took the two separate lightsabers here. I took the two separate lightsabers here and had them crisscrossing with the character in the background there. Crisscross them back here. I actually built an entirely new lightsaber for Mickey Mouse. I actually made it back during the Solo production. And if you look down on the hilt, I actually put a Mickey Mouse logo right there. And it's the same basic layout as Hunter's lightsaber, but the bottom is very, very different, and obviously there's a different beam. I just moved a couple things around. And then we have this other vector I made with Hunter kicking with the lightsaber. I've had the kick vector forever, but it's more movements and reactions, and then the reaction here is Hunter moves forward to the point where his rear hoof here is out of frame, and Mickey sort of falls backwards. And that's his lightsaber closing out. The head slam sound effect was actually from Fallout 3, if you can believe it or not. Anyway, where was I? I lost my train of thought. I was going to talk about something and then I lost it. Anyway, So yeah, then Hunter pulls his lightsaber into frame and does the bit about the choreography, which there are videos online that go over the choreography in the Disney Star Wars movies. They're terrible. They are just horrendously terrible. And I actually wanted this lightsaber to go on for a little bit longer and be a bit more dramatic, but during this whole opening bit, I was really pressed for time. This is a review, first and foremost. This bit at the beginning that goes for 7 minutes is a footnote, but I love it. I put so much work into these because I just love it. We got the timing down perfectly with the first one. Then with the second one, I got way too ambitious. And this third one is just me. I wanted to do so many things. I wanted us to destroy the entire fleet, but we really only had time for one Star Destroyer, which the effects that went into play there were fantastic. I had to scrap the whole thing where he's taking advantage of the bridge being a huge exploitable weakness, and the bridge shears off from the rest of the ship. It was going to be this great big dramatic thing, and the lightsaber fight was actually going to go on for longer too. But I had to cut it short, which is why I want to do the full Star Horse thing, so that we could actually do it properly and actually enjoy the moment and have tons and tons of fun with it. Anyway, so we find out it's behind the couch. The couch was just a simple Google image search. And then Hunter shears that in half. The shearing in half, same effect as the Star Destroyer. And then it just sort of falls away when it's done being cut in half. The first shot here, second shot here. And then the two pieces just sort of fall away to reveal the movie in the background. Just sort of sitting there. Simple linear wipe to put the lightsaber down. And then Mickey's in frame for a few short seconds to say that he's leaving. Then TIE Advance drops out from between the layers. The aluminum Falcon is all the way on the bottom. That's actually a new image for the aluminum Falcon. This is a bottom shot. And that is on the bottom there, with the TIE Advanced in the middle and the Arquitans on the top, because the fighter comes out from underneath it, and it's all dramatic and like, ah! That's TIE fighter noise. And actually, the Arquitans and the destroyed Star Destroyer are the same image, which is why we see the Falcon do like a rotation sort of thing and then fly off in that direction. This shot right here, copy and pasted from when we cut the door open. And this is just it without any movement. And then we do the rotation and it flies off. And then we copy the effect we did for the solo opening. And then Hunter reviews the Star Wars Holiday Special. And we get into the actual, review. There's a couple of effects I actually wanted to go over. There's the one bit where they're talking on the radio, and this, you could actually find a generator for this online. It's one of the simplest things in the world. I actually used a couple of a bit of footage from our live stream to make fun of these space shots, because they recycled the shots. It was amazing. And that goes, the Kazook planet, one of my favorite gags in the entire review, which just search for a kazoo and then a picture of a planet on top of a couple of layers. Layer after layer after layer. I was looking for the, here it is. Half of a TIE fighter, one half of a TIE fighter. It's the same basic effect as the Star Destroyer being chopped in half. We have the two different halves of a TIE fighter, and then we just take that bit away. And then it is half of a TIE fighter. And I actually did do a frame-by-frame analysis of the entire scene. And, if we look really close, you can see, right at this very moment where the laser blast hits, it shears the TIE fighter in half. And then the TIE fighter just sort of goes and slams into the giant, ugly bottom bomb bay part of the resistance bomber. And then that falls apart. A frickin' piece of debris frickin' flies out of that, blows up the second bomber. And then what I assume is a piece of the TIE fighter flies out of that and slams into the third bomber. So, half of a TIE fighter takes out 3 resistance bombers. The weakest ship in Star Wars, except, of course, for the one that Chewie blew up. I have no idea how the Resistance Bomber was made by the same people who made the B-Wing, but they need to be fired. And then the review continues as normal, standard Hunter review stuff. But then we actually had the bit at the end with George Lucas. This is a Gary's Mod map, Falcon Beta, which I think they're still working on it, but for the purposes of this review, it worked fine. And we have the cutout image of George Lucas himself. This is the same poster that I just used for the whole review, because this is the only cover image that I can find for the Star Wars Holiday Special, because this movie has been stricken from the history books to the best of George Lucas's ability. And the whole bit at the end here with the hammer and him smashing it with the hammer. By the way, the hammer bit, it's all incredibly simple pan shots. Like, this is him raising the hammer, and then an incredibly quick swing down on top of the DVD, and it's the same effect of the Star Destroyer being cut in half, which before you guys ask down in the comments, yes, it is my new favorite effect to do in Sony Vegas. I love that effect. It is so useful. And also, before people ask, yes, I pulled out some sound clips of Gabe Newell to do the voice of George Lucas, because in my opinion, they look very, very, very much alike. And then we cut over to the credits, which it's a copy and pasted effect of it's a copy and pasted effect from Solo. I actually copied a whole bunch of the credits here from Solo and then expanded upon it, which you'll notice the credits for this are much, much longer. And that's because I wanted to do a lot more with the credits instead of just our standard stuff, which is why there's all these new categories in here. And of course, we have that awesome rock cover. And of course, we have to have the iris fade out. With the Star Wars movies, they always have the iris fade out to the credits. And this right here is actually one image of Hunter sitting in the cockpit of the aluminum Falcon, looking all dramatic like as it fades. Because if I just have the background, like what we have right here, just the vector and the background, it doesn't work. It'll only grab the vector or something else and it'll look all weird. So what I do is I paste them both into the same image and I have it fade out from that, and the effect works really, 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 really well. And we didn't get claimed for this review either, before you guys ask. It's actually doing fairly well. So that is the longest opening scene to a Hunter Reviews episode, and the longest and the most laborious editing I have ever done on an intro segment of a Hunter Reviews episode. This took, I want to say, 4 days. No, a week. This took a week to get wrapped up to a point where it could be considered finished and I could go do my review. And it really is a labor of love with this. And I love doing it. If I didn't love doing these incredibly complex intros, I wouldn't do it. But it always comes out fantastic, and I always try to push the boundaries further and further. Like with the original, I established a basic idea as to what I wanted to do with these intros. With the Solo review, I took it a little bit further. Tried out a couple new things, which ended up being more of a hunt for backgrounds than anything else. And finally, I just went over to Gary's mod. And you'll notice I used Gary's mod twice, and that's because there's a lot of Star Wars maps available. And then with this, I said, I want to do a space battle. And I'm thinking if with the next Disney Star Wars review, episode 9, which is probably what it will be, which, yes, we're doing episode 9, quit asking. I want to do a ground battle, and I have yet to figure out how I'm going to do that, how I'm going to get the assets together, and whose characters are going to be in it. But with that is the incredibly laborious editing process of Hunter Reviews, the Star Wars Holiday Special, it's one of the most infamous films of all time, and I wanted to do something special. Personally, I think we nailed it.